March of 1986. The opening stage of the Rally de Portugal, deep in the pine forests outside Lisbon. Portuguese driver Joaquim Santos, behind the wheel of a privately entered Ford RS200, swerves to avoid a spectator standing in the road, loses control, and plows directly into the crowd. 3 spectators are killed instantly, and more than 30 others are injured. Every major factory team, Peugeot, Lancia, Audi, and Ford, immediately withdraws from the event in protest, refusing to continue a rally where they can no longer guarantee anyone's safety. Just 2 months later, on a mountain road in Corsica, one of the most gifted rally drivers alive, Henri Toivonen, and his co-driver Sergio Cresto, are killed instantly when their Lancia Delta South 4 leaves the road and bursts into flames. Within days, motorsport's governing body bans the entire category responsible for both disasters. Group B, the most powerful, least regulated, and most dangerous class of race car ever allowed on public roads. Group B didn't just build race cars. To even qualify for the category, manufacturers were required by something called homologation to also build a minimum number of road-going versions for regular customers. And because Group B demanded insane horsepower, forced induction, and all-wheel drive just to survive a gravel stage, the street versions that trickled into European showrooms were unlike anything Detroit ever allowed on American soil. Here's the problem for anyone in the United States who wanted one. These were, technically, full production automobiles, which meant that to legally sell even a single one on American soil, a manufacturer had to certify that exact model against Environmental Protection Agency emissions rules and pass a full battery of crash tests under the Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standards enforced by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. For a homologation special built in a production run of 200, 500, or a couple of thousand units total, that certification process could cost more than the entire production run was worth. So the math was simple. These manufacturers built just enough cars to legally go racing, sold every single one across Europe, Japan, and Australia, and never filed a single piece of paperwork with Washington. For decades, if you were an American enthusiast, all you could do was read about these machines in imported magazines and dream. But stick around, because in 2026, that dream has become a reality. Thanks to what's known as the 25-year rule, a provision that grew out of the Imported Vehicle Safety Compliance Act of 1988, any car built more than 25 years ago is completely exempt from those federal safety standards and can be legally imported and titled in the United States. Every single car on this list, the same cars Washington refused to certify, is now sitting on used car websites around the world, fully legal, and waiting for an American garage. So if forbidden fruit is your thing, smash that subscribe button right now, because we are counting down 10 of the most legendary, most banned, most gloriously over-engineered European road cars that America was never allowed to have. Number 10 takes us back to 1980 and the Renault 5 Turbo, one of the strangest and most brilliant homologation specials ever built. Renault engineers took a humble front-wheel drive economy hatchback, ripped out the back seats, and stuffed a turbocharged 1.4-liter 4-cylinder engine directly behind the driver's head, turning a shopping car into a mid-engine missile producing around 160 horsepower sent exclusively to the rear wheels. The bodywork ballooned outward with enormous box flares to cover wider tires, and the car went on to win the Monte Carlo Rally outright in 1981 with Gene Ragnati behind the wheel. Renault built just under 5,000 units combined across the original Turbo and the simplified Turbo 2 that followed. It never had a chance in America, because Renault pulled out of the United States market entirely in 1987 after its partnership with American Motors collapsed, and a car this small, this strange, and this low volume was never worth $1 of federal certification. Moving up to number 9, we cross into Group A territory with the Ford Sierra RS Cosworth, a car so notorious in the United Kingdom that insurance companies and actual police departments treated it like a public menace. Ford needed 5,545 road-going examples to satisfy homologation rules for touring car racing, and starting in 1986 they built exactly that many, powering the 3-door hatchback with a 2-liter turbocharged Cosworth YB engine producing around 204 horsepower, topped off with that unmistakable whale tail rear wing. By 1990, Ford introduced an all-wheel drive Sapphire Cosworth 4x4 version pushing output up to around 220 horsepower. Criminals loved stealing them as getaway cars, and British police loved using them right back as pursuit vehicles, because nothing else in their fleet could catch one. Ford of Europe never had any intention of federalizing this car for America, especially since Ford never sold any vehicle under the Sierra nameplate in the United States to begin with. At number 8 we have one of the maddest hot hatchbacks ever built, the Renault Clio V6. Renault took its adorable little Clio Super Mini, deleted the back seats entirely, and shoehorned a 3-liter V6 engine into the space where passengers would normally sit, driving the rear wheels only. The first version, built by Tom Walkinshaw Racing starting in the year 2000, produced around 227 horsepower, while the revised second generation, built in-house by Renault Sport from 2003 onward, pushed that to around 252 horsepower. With most of its weight sitting behind the driver, The Clio V6 earned a reputation for vicious, trailing throttle oversteer that caught out more than a few professional test drivers on camera. Renault built only a few thousand units combined across both versions, and since Renault had already abandoned the American market back in 1987, there was no sales channel left to bring it here even if they had wanted to. Number 7 brings us back to Ford for the Escort RS Cosworth, arguably the most recognizable rally homologation special of the entire 1990s, thanks to the enormous whale-tail spoiler mounted on struts above the trunk lid. Underneath, Ford squeezed in a 2-liter turbocharged Cosworth YB engine producing around 227 horsepower, sending power through a proper all-wheel drive system. Ford built just over 7,000 units to satisfy Group A homologation requirements for the World Rally Championship, where the Escort Cosworth became one of the most successful rally cars of its era. Despite sharing a name with Ford's American Escort compact car, this was a completely different vehicle, built on a different platform in Europe, for a market that never required it to pass a single United States crash test. Number 6 takes us upmarket to Stuttgart for the Mercedes-Benz 190e Evolution 2, a car so extreme that Mercedes built precisely 502 examples in 1990, just enough to satisfy Group A homologation rules for the German Touring Car Championship. Underneath that towering rear wing and aggressive front splitter sat a naturally aspirated 2.5-liter, 16-valve 4-cylinder engine co-developed with Cosworth in England, producing around 235 horsepower and screaming to a red line well north of 7,000 RPM. On track, it dominated touring car competition for years. On American shores, it simply never existed, because Mercedes-Benz's official United States lineup at the time consisted of comfortable, emissions-certified sedans, and there was no business case for spending millions of dollars certifying a 500-unit homologation special for a market that would buy maybe a handful of them. Number 5 is where things start to get genuinely absurd, with the BMW Alpina B10 Bi-Turbo. Alpina isn't just a tuning shop slapping on a badge. Since 1983, the German government has officially recognized Alpina as an independent automobile manufacturer in its own right, with its own separate type approval from BMW. Starting with BMW S5 Series sedan, Alpina's engineers bolted twin turbochargers onto a 3.5-liter 6-cylinder engine, extracting around 360 horsepower at a time when a normal family sedan produced roughly half that. Alpina built just over 500 examples and claimed a top speed of 176 miles per hour, briefly making it, according to Alpina at least, the fastest 4-door production sedan on planet Earth. BMW never sold Alpina models in the United States during this era, since Alpina operated as a completely separate, small-volume manufacturer with no American distribution network and no interest in funding federal crash testing for 500 cars. Number 4 is the car that actually took Alpina's fastest sedan crown, and then triggered a genuine moral panic in the British press. The Opel Lotus Omega, sold in the United Kingdom as the Vauxhall Lotus Carlton, paired General Motors' European Omega sedan with a twin-turbocharged 3.6-liter straight-six engineered by Lotus, producing around 377 horsepower and a claimed top speed of 176 miles per hour. British newspapers ran headlines demanding the car be banned outright, insurance companies refused to write policies for it, and multiple police forces publicly admitted they had nothing in their fleet capable of chasing one down. Fewer than 1,000 examples were built across both badge variants, and it was never sold in the United States, both because General Motors' European Opel and British Vauxhall brands didn't operate under those names in America, and because a 377 horsepower family sedan that could outrun the police was exactly the kind of headline no American regulator wanted to deal with. Number 3 is the car that basically invented the idea of a super-fast station wagon, the Audi RS2 Avant. In 1994, Audi partnered directly with Porsche, who actually built the car on Porsche's own assembly line in Zuffenhausen, fitting Porsche brake calipers, Porsche wheels, and Porsche side mirrors onto an Audi wagon body. Under the hood sat a turbocharged 2.2-liter 5-cylinder engine producing around 311 horsepower, sent to all four wheels through Audi's Quattro system, letting this grocery-getter hit 60 miles an hour in well under 5 seconds, quick enough to embarrass contemporary Ferraris away from a stoplight. Audi built fewer than 2,900 examples total, and its official United States lineup at the time never included anything close to this level of performance, since certifying a car built in such tiny numbers made zero financial sense against the cost of emissions and safety compliance testing. Number 2 brings us back to where we started tonight, Group B, and the car that made Peugeot a legend, the 205 T16. To satisfy homologation rules, Peugeot built exactly 200 road-going examples in 1984, mounting a turbocharged 1.775-liter 4-cylinder engine transversely behind the seats and sending power to all four wheels, producing around 200 horsepower in road trim. The actual competition cars evolved far beyond that, with later Evolution versions producing well over 500 horsepower in a car weighing barely 1 ton. When Group B was banned for the 1987 season following that string of fatal accidents, the 205 T16's racing career ended overnight, but the 200 road cars remained frozen in time as some of the rarest homologation specials on Earth. Peugeot exited the American market completely in 1991, and even before that exit, a 200-unit Halo car built around a mid-mounted rally engine was never remotely close to earning federal certification. And that brings us to number 1, the ultimate holy grail of this entire list, the car that didn't just survive Group B's cancellation, it thrived in the aftermath. The Lancia Delta Integrale. When Group B died, the World Rally Championship moved to the tamer Group A category, and Lancia simply took its humble front-wheel drive Delta hatchback, added a turbocharged 2-liter 4-cylinder engine and full-time all-wheel drive, and proceeded to dominate the competition for the next 6 consecutive seasons. Starting at around 165 horsepower in its earliest form, the Delta evolved generation after generation, eventually reaching around 215 horsepower in its final Evolution 2 form released in 1993, wearing flared box arches, a towering rear spoiler, and 4 massive fog lamps that became instantly recognizable on rally stages across the globe. Lancia won the World Rally Championship manufacturer's title every single year from 1987 through 1992. 6 years in a row, a run of dominance that still stands as one of the greatest in the history of motorsport. And Americans got exactly none of it, because Lancia had already abandoned the United States market back in 1982 after years of quality control and rust-related complaints, meaning the single greatest rally homologation special ever built was never even a remote possibility for an American showroom, federal regulations aside. 10 cars, 1 country, and decades of federal paperwork standing between American driveways and some of the greatest engineering Europe ever produced. The good news, like we said earlier, is that every single one of these is now old enough to legally import under the 25-year rule, so the forbidden fruit is finally within reach if you have got the patience and the budget to track one down. So tell me in the comments, which one of these 10 would you import first if you found one for sale tomorrow? Drop your pick below, hit subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you in the next one.